My mother-in-law lied to my husband, telling him he wasn't the father of my child because I refused to continue paying her rent, so they kicked me out of the house. Years later, she wants to be a family again, but I have a little surprise for her. My name is Amy and I'm 33 years old. 5 years ago, my entire life fell apart. Let me start from the beginning. I met my husband Jordan, 35, while visiting my friend Sarah, who lived in a beautiful city. I remember it was the first week of July and the weather was perfect. Sarah had been insisting for a long time that I come stay with her, and I finally decided to take her up on the offer. Little did I know that this trip would change my life forever. Jordan lived right next door to Sarah. On my first day there, I was sitting on Sarah's porch, eating ice cream and enjoying the sunset when I saw him for the first time. He was watering his plants, looking calm and content. Our eyes met, and I swear I felt something change inside me. You know that feeling when you know something special is about to happen? That's how I felt. Sarah noticed my interest and told me that Jordan was a great guy but had been single for a while. She suggested I say hi to him the next time I saw him, which I did the following day. I was on my way to grab a coffee, and there he was, sitting on his porch reading a book. I mustered the courage to introduce myself, and we ended up chatting for almost an hour. We talked about everything, from our favorite books to our love for hiking. Talking to him was so easy, like we had known each other for years. As my trip neared its end, I started feeling sad about leaving. On my last night there, Jordan and I went out for dinner. It wasn't anything fancy, just a cozy little restaurant by the lake, but it was perfect. We talked about our lives, our dreams, and what we wanted for the future. When he dropped me off at Sarah's house, we shared our first kiss. It was like something out of a movie, fireworks, butterflies, the whole deal. After returning home, we kept in touch through calls and texts. It wasn't long before we were spending hours on the phone every night, talking about everything under the sun. We decided to give a long-distance relationship a try, and over the next few months, we made it work. We visited each other as often as we could. He came to see me in my city, and I went back to visit him when I could. Those weekends together were the highlight of my life at that time. Eventually, the distance started to become harder and harder. Both of us were miserable every time we had to say goodbye, and it was getting increasingly difficult to be apart. So, after about a year of long-distance dating, I started looking for jobs in his city. I was lucky enough to find a great opportunity and decided to take the leap and move there. One thing in our relationship that always felt odd to me was his relationship with his mother Pam, who was 57 years old. Now, here's the thing about Pam. She and Jordan were very close. Jordan is your typical mama's boy, and Pam is one of those mothers who don't think anyone is good enough for their son. Her relationship with Jordan sometimes made me feel like the third wheel in our own relationship. One of the first incidents that made me realize how close they were happened right after I moved in with Jordan. We had just settled into our new apartment and were still getting things organized. One afternoon, Pam showed up unannounced. She had a key to the place, which I didn't know she had, and walked in while we were having dinner. It was a bit awkward, to say the least. She started rearranging things in the kitchen, telling us how she thought they should be organized. I tried to laugh it off, thinking she was just being helpful, but it felt like she was trying to impose her way of doing things on us. Pam's opinions often seemed to carry more weight than mine. I remember when we were picking out furniture for our place, we found a beautiful couch that we both loved. But when Pam saw it, she wrinkled her nose and said it wasn't practical and that we should get something else. Jordan agreed with her, and we ended up buying another couch, one Pam liked but that I didn't really care for. It was frustrating because I felt like my opinions and preferences were overshadowed by hers. After Jordan proposed to me, Pam almost became hostile toward me. While I was planning my wedding, she tried to take over everything. But I stood my ground and managed to have the wedding of my dreams. Let me tell you, it wasn't easy. Pam was like a hurricane, sweeping through every aspect of our wedding plans, and I had to be the immovable rock standing in her way. Right after we announced our engagement, Pam started calling me every day with suggestions and ideas for the wedding. At first, I thought she was just being helpful, but it quickly became clear that she wanted to be in charge of everything. She'd say things like, "You should go for a traditional church wedding, Amy. It's what our family expects." But Jordan and I had already decided we wanted an outdoor ceremony by a lake, surrounded by nature. It was something that meant a lot to both of us, but Pam wouldn't accept it. She even went so far as to book a church and arrange a meeting with the pastor without consulting us. Then there was the issue with the dress. I had found the perfect dress, simple, elegant, and made me feel like a princess. But when Pam saw it, she wrinkled her nose and said, "Oh, it's okay, but don't you think it's a bit plain? You should go for something more extravagant, like a ball gown." She even took me to another bridal shop and tried to get me to buy a huge puffy dress that looked like it came straight out of a fairy tale. It wasn't me at all, and I had to firmly tell her that I was sticking with my choice. She looked so disappointed, but I wasn't going to let her guilt trip me into changing my mind. On the wedding day, Pam tried to take over everything. She was telling the photographer where to stand, instructing the band on what to play, and even trying to rearrange the decorations. At one point, I had to pull her aside and politely but firmly tell her that we had everything under control and that she should relax and enjoy the day. It was hard, but I was determined to make sure our wedding reflected who we were as a couple, not her vision. A year after the wedding, Pam lost her job. She had been working as a manager at a local store, but unfortunately the store closed down. It was a tough time for her, and she was pretty upset. Jordan and I talked it over and agreed that until she found another job, we'd help her with her rent. Pam's place wasn't too far from us, so it made sense to help her out so she wouldn't have to worry about finances on top of everything else. Pam started looking for a new job but kept complaining that it was hard to find one because of her age. She'd say, "Nobody wants to hire someone in their late 50s. They all want young people." At first, I felt a lot of sympathy for her and tried to be as supportive as possible. I even helped her update her resume and coached her on how to answer interview questions. But after a few weeks, I started noticing a pattern. Every time she went to an interview, she'd come back with a story about how the interviewer didn't seem to like her or how the job wasn't suitable because the company seemed too disorganized. She would say things like, "I can't believe how unprofessional these people are," or "I don't want to work in a place that's so disorganized." It started to seem like she was finding excuses not to accept any job that came her way. A year went by, and Pam still hadn't managed to get a job. We were still paying her rent, and it was beginning to take a serious toll on our finances. But then things changed significantly. I found out I was pregnant. It was the happiest day of my life. I had always wanted to be a mother, and knowing I was going to have a baby made everything feel brighter. Jordan and I were thrilled and immediately started preparing for our little one's arrival. When I was about 8 months pregnant, I decided it was time to take my maternity leave. I worked in sales, and although I still received my base salary during my leave, my main source of income was commissions, which stopped as soon as I took the leave. This meant that our income dropped significantly, and our financial situation became much tighter. We managed, but it became clear we couldn't keep paying Pam's rent for much longer without seriously compromising our own financial stability. As my due date approached, the stress of our financial situation began to weigh heavily on me. I should have been focusing on preparing for the baby and enjoying the special time, but instead, I was constantly worrying about money. We had savings, but they were depleting quickly, and we needed to make sure we had enough to cover any unexpected expenses that might come up with the baby. We agreed that we needed to have a serious conversation with Pam and let her know we wouldn't be able to continue paying her rent. We decided to have the conversation the next day. Pam came over for lunch, and after we finished eating, we sat down with her in the living room. I was very nervous, my heart pounding in my chest. Jordan started by explaining our situation, how my income had decreased significantly, and how we were struggling to make ends meet. Pam listened quietly, but I could see her expression darken as she realized where the conversation was going. When we told her we could no longer afford to pay her rent, she got very upset. She said, "How am I supposed to survive without your help? I've been trying to find a job, but no one wants to hire someone my age." I found it ironic because that wasn't what was really happening. Plus, we knew we had to prioritize our own family's needs, especially with a baby on the way. I tried to stay calm and explain that we had been supporting her for over a year and simply couldn't afford to do so anymore. I suggested she look into other options, like finding a roommate to share the rent or even moving to a more affordable place. Pam wasn't happy with that. She said she couldn't live with a stranger and that moving would be too much for her to handle. The conversation was difficult and didn't end on good terms. Pam left upset, and I felt terrible. Less than a week later, Pam visited us again, and this time she didn't mention anything about the rent. I thought we had moved past the issue. She seemed calm, and we had a pleasant chat about the baby and other light topics. It felt like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders, and I was relieved that things seemed to be improving. But then, after she left, something strange happened. Jordan received a call from her, and I could see him tense up as he listened. He didn't say much, just a few yes and "Okay, I'll be there soon." Less than 5 minutes later, he grabbed his keys and told me he had to go out for a bit. I assumed he was going to Pam's house, but at the time I didn't think much of it. I figured maybe she needed help with something. Hours went by, and Jordan still hadn't returned. I started to worry and tried calling him, but he didn't answer. I sent him a few text messages asking where he was and if everything was okay. All he replied was a short message saying he wouldn't be home that night and that he'd explain everything later. I couldn't understand why he wasn't coming home or what could be so important that he had to stay out all night. The next day, I had an important prenatal appointment. Jordan was supposed to come with me, but he didn't show up, so I went alone. Everything went well at the appointment, and I couldn't wait to share the updates with him. But when I got home, I was met with a shocking sight. My belongings were on the porch. Clothes, books, everything. There was a note taped to the door from Jordan. It said he knew I had been unfaithful and that he wasn't the father of the baby. My heart sank, and I felt a wave of panic wash over me. I tried to get inside, but the locks had been changed. How had he managed to do all of this so quickly? It was as if my world had been turned upside down in an instant. I didn't know where to go, so I went to my friend Sarah's house. She lived right next door to us, and I hoped she could help me figure out what to do. When I knocked on her door, she looked at me and knew something was terribly wrong. She let me in, and as soon as I started telling her what had happened, she was just as shocked as I was. I tried calling Jordan, but he didn't answer. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of everything. Then, out of nowhere, I received a text message from Jordan. It was a picture of me standing at our front door with a man. I was smiling, and the man was handing me something. I remembered the man. He was a colleague who had come by a few times to have me sign some work documents. Nothing inappropriate had happened. He was just a coworker. I was so confused and hurt. I texted Jordan, trying to explain that the man in the photo was just a colleague and that nothing had happened between us. But Jordan didn't believe me. He just responded, saying he wanted a divorce and that he couldn't trust me anymore. It was like a knife to the heart. I couldn't believe how little it took to destroy our relationship. Believe me, I did everything I could to explain and reassure him, but it seemed like he had already made up his mind. Something had changed in him, and he wasn't willing to listen to me at all. A few weeks later, I was still living at Sarah's house. I was trying to stay strong, but it was hard with all the stress and uncertainty surrounding me. I made plans to temporarily move in with my parents to find some stability, but I couldn't travel at the time because of how far along I was in my pregnancy. It just wasn't safe for me or the baby. I needed help, so I asked my mom to come and stay with me. She flew in the next day, and it was such a relief to have her by my side during this difficult time. My mom helped me find a small apartment nearby. It wasn't much, but it was a place where I could start over. I used the little money I had saved to sign the lease, and my parents generously lent me money to help with the baby's expenses. They have been my rock throughout all of this, and I couldn't have made it without them. It was a humbling experience to depend on my parents in this way, but I was grateful for their support. I had to give birth to my baby without my husband. My mom was there, but I still felt very alone. A month later, I was still trying to reach out to Jordan, sending him texts, photos of our son, and doing everything I could to make him believe he was the father. I told him we could do a paternity test and that all we needed was a sample of his hair, but he wasn't even willing to try. It was as if he had completely shut me out. Then one day, out of the blue, he sent me the divorce papers. I was furious and heartbroken at the same time. I didn't know what to do. I felt so helpless and abandoned. I had no choice but to hire a lawyer. I thought if Jordan didn't want to accept his child, then fine, we didn't need him. I was determined to move forward for the sake of my son. The lawyer was very understanding and helped me navigate the entire process. I decided to include a clause in the divorce papers stating that Jordan would forfeit his parental rights. I was shocked when he happily signed the papers without any objections. It was as if he didn't even care. Within a few months, we were divorced. Raising my child alone was really tough. There were sleepless nights, endless diaper changes, and moments when I just felt completely overwhelmed. If it hadn't been for my mom, who came to help with the baby, my dad, who provided financial support, and my friends, who helped me stay sane through all of this, I would have lost my mind. My mom stayed with me for several months, helping with everything, from feedings to midnight cuddles. She was my rock, always there to lift me up when I felt down and remind me I wasn't alone in this journey. My dad was amazing too, offering financial support, which was a huge relief. Being a single mother with a newborn and trying to make ends meet was incredibly stressful. But knowing my dad had my back made it a little easier to breathe. My friends, especially Sarah, were lifesavers. They visited, brought food, and took me out for coffee just to get me out of the house. They kept me grounded and gave me the strength to carry on, even when things got really tough. However, despite all the support, I fell into a deep depression when I found out that Jordan was already getting married to someone else. Yes, within a year of separating, he was engaged to someone new. It hit me like a bucket of cold water. I couldn't help but think that he was with this new girl while still married to me. Suddenly, everything started making sense. Why he was so unwilling to listen to me when I tried to explain the truth about our baby. He just wanted an out from our marriage so he could leave me and our child behind. It took me a while, but I eventually managed to pick up the pieces of my life after everything fell apart. After Jordan kicked me out and filed for divorce, I leaned heavily on my parents and friends. They helped me find a small apartment where I could settle with my newborn. Financially, things were tough at first. I had to return to work not long after giving birth. Despite the challenges of being a single mom, my parents helped with childcare, and I gradually managed to stabilize our situation. Juggling work and motherhood was hard, but every smile from my son made it all worth it. A few years later, I attended a work conference where I met Austin, a 33-year-old man. We hit it off instantly, but I was cautious after everything I had been through. He was patient and understanding, never pushing me to open up before I was ready. We started spending more time together, and before I knew it, I was falling deeply in love with him. Austin was unlike anyone I had ever met. He was supportive of my past and genuinely interested in building a future together. He treated my son as his own, which meant the world to me. After dating for some time, we decided to take the next step. Last year, we got married in a beautiful outdoor ceremony on a friend's property. It was an intimate event with close friends and family. Walking down the aisle with my son by my side and Austin waiting for us at the end was a moment I'll never forget. And no meddling mother-in-law. I felt like we had finally formed the happy family I had always dreamed of. Since then, life has treated us well. Austin and I continue to support each other through thick and thin. He's been a wonderful father figure to my son, and seeing them bond melts my heart every day. We've created a loving and stable home where my son can thrive, and I couldn't be more grateful. Last month, out of nowhere, I received a text message from Jordan. Honestly, seeing his name pop up on my phone brought back a flood of emotions, anger, pain, and a touch of curiosity. I didn't respond and immediately blocked his number. I thought that would be the end of it, but then things took an unexpected turn. A few days later, there was a knock at my door. To my surprise, it was Jordan. I hadn't told him where I lived, so I had no idea how he found me. He asked to talk, saying he only wanted a few minutes of my time. I was hesitant, but I eventually let him in, setting a strict time limit. Jordan started by saying he wanted to see our son and be a family again. My initial reaction was disbelief. After everything that had happened, being accused of cheating, being kicked out, and then divorced, it was a lot to process. I was shocked and honestly quite angry. I told him that our son already has a father, my husband Austin, who legally adopted him after we got married. Jordan didn't take this well at all. He argued that Austin was just a stepfather and not our son's real dad. The situation became tense, and I had to remind Jordan that he voluntarily gave up his parental rights during our divorce. He grew even angrier and refused to leave, insisting on meeting our son. I felt so cornered that I threatened to call the police if he didn't leave. He eventually left after slamming the door on his way out. Since then, Jordan has been bombarding me, my mom, and my friends with calls and messages. I feel overwhelmed and unsure of how to handle this situation. It's as if he's trying to force his way back into our lives after abandoning us. Has anyone else gone through something similar? Any advice on how to deal with Jordan's persistence without risking the peace of my family would be greatly appreciated. Thank you in advance for your help. Update 1. I wanted to update everyone on what's been happening since my last post. First, thank you all for your support and suggestions. It really means a lot to me. After Jordan showed up unannounced and began harassing us, I decided to seek legal advice. I contacted a lawyer and explained the entire situation. She assured me that legally, Jordan has no rights over my son. She explained that since my husband Austin legally adopted my son after we got married, Jordan's rights as the biological father were effectively terminated when he voluntarily gave up parental rights during our divorce. It was a huge relief to hear this from a legal professional. She also advised me on the steps I could take if Jordan continued to harass us. She said we could pursue legal measures like obtaining a restraining order or other actions to ensure our safety and peace of mind. Now, I know that legally, my family is protected, and I don't have to entertain Jordan's attempts to disrupt our lives. After telling Austin about it, he was understandably concerned and told me never to open the door if Jordan showed up again. He's worried about Jordan's behavior, and honestly, I am too. However, curiosity got the better of me, and I did a little digging on social media. It turns out Jordan is now divorced. I can't say I'm surprised, to be honest. Starting a new relationship at the end of another rarely ends well. Since that incident, Jordan has not stopped texting and calling from different numbers because I have him blocked. It's all he's been doing, constantly trying to contact us. It's frustrating and unsettling, but for now, that's all it has been. I keep Austin informed about everything, and he has been incredibly understanding. We both agree to avoid engaging with Jordan and to prioritize our safety and peace of mind. If Jordan escalates or tries something else, I'm ready to take legal action to protect my family. Update 2. I have another update for you. I'm feeling very shaken right now. Earlier today, I was at the park with my son just enjoying some time outdoors when suddenly, Jordan appeared. At first, I couldn't believe it. I froze for a moment, unsure of how to react. Jordan approached us and tried to talk to my son. Immediately, I stepped between them, shielding my son from Jordan. I firmly told him to leave us alone, and that he had no right to be there or approach my son. However, Jordan was persistent. He started saying things like he wanted to see his son and be a family again. It was incredibly disturbing to hear him talk like that after everything that has happened. I was scared of what he might do next. I tried to stay calm but firm. I told him that if he didn't leave immediately, I would call the police. I could see the surprise and anger on his face, but I didn't back down. My priority was to protect my son and ensure our safety. After what felt like an eternity, he finally backed off. He muttered something under his breath and walked away, but he kept looking back at us as he left the park. I stayed there for a while, trying to process what had happened and calm down. When I got home, I immediately called Austin and told him everything. He was furious and worried, but assured me that we would take all the necessary steps to keep ourselves safe. He insisted that I should have called the police right then and there, but I was so shocked that it didn't occur to me. Now I feel scared and anxious about what might happen next. Jordan's behavior is becoming more unpredictable and aggressive, and I don't know how to handle it. I'm seriously considering getting a restraining order to protect my son and myself from any future encounters. Update 3. I wanted to let you know how things have been going with Jordan. It's been a roller coaster, but I think things might finally be settling down. After the park incident, where Jordan showed up unexpectedly, I realized I couldn't keep living in fear of him, so I made a decision. I unblocked him and sent a firm text telling him that if he wanted to see his son, he needed to get a lawyer, and we could discuss things through legal channels. I didn't want any more surprises or confrontations. I also made sure to have my lawyer with me when we met. Austin was there too, supporting me. It was important to have that backing. When Jordan and his lawyer arrived, we had a serious discussion. My lawyer explained the situation clearly. Jordan had no legal rights to my son. She made it clear that any further attempts to contact me or my son would result in legal action, including involving the police if necessary. I think the formality of the meeting and my lawyer's firm stance finally made Jordan realize the seriousness of the situation. Since then, he hasn't attempted to contact me again. Things have been quiet, and for that, I'm incredibly relieved. Of course, I'm still cautious. I don't know if this saga with Jordan is truly over or if he might try something else in the future. But for now, I'm taking it day by day and focusing on moving forward with my family, Austin, and my son. Update 4. Unfortunately, I have to make another update because Jordan came back to my house again. Luckily, Austin was home this time, so when he saw Jordan standing outside, pacing in the yard, he went out to confront him. He told Jordan to leave and not come back unless he wanted to get into trouble. Austin is a bit taller and bigger than Jordan, but that didn't seem to intimidate him. Jordan was yelling that he wanted to talk to me and see his son and he wouldn't leave. So, I called the police and even told him I was doing it. When the police finally arrived, 2 officers, 1 woman and 1 man, we started explaining what had happened. I explained that Jordan was not the legal father of my son and had no rights to see him. The female officer took me inside while Austin stayed outside with the other officer, who tried to explain to Jordan that he couldn't be there and needed to leave or face arrest. Jordan kept yelling that he was the biological father and needed to see his son, refusing to leave. Eventually, the officer handcuffed him and put him in the back of the patrol car. Even then, he wouldn't calm down and kept yelling the whole time. That was 2 days ago. This morning, we met with the lawyer to file for a restraining order to prevent Jordan from coming near us or our son. We'll see what happens with that. Update 5. I'm back with another update 2 weeks since the last one. Today, I came home to find a letter slipped under the door. It had nothing written on the outside, but I had a feeling it was from Jordan. My lawyer currently has it, as it will support the restraining order. It can take a couple of months to get one approved in our state. The letter was long and erratic, making it hard to understand. I had to read it several times to decipher what it said. Here's a summary. First, Jordan's mother had passed away a few months ago. I won't lie, it feels good to know that, as she was the root of all this. At the same time, I don't know whether to thank her because if it weren't for her, I might still be married to someone with psychopathic tendencies, or whatever disorder he has. The letter also claims his mother lied to him, not just about the photo which actually showed nothing, but about other things she allegedly saw. For example, she claimed to have seen me arriving home with someone or behaving oddly with my phone around Jordan. I don't know what to think, whether this is all just an excuse now or if he truly believed her. But then I remember how he always took his mother's side, so it's not surprising he would have believed her. The letter included insults toward me for not fighting for him and his family, which is the most ridiculous part of all this. According to Jordan, he learned the truth about his mother's lies when, shortly before her death from cancer, She was under heavy medication and admitted that she hadn't even needed to lie about infidelity with his new wife. That's when he realized his mistake, and he became desperate to make amends. It's too late for that because I will not let him see my son, no matter how regretful he claims to be. Update 6. Hi everyone. The restraining order has finally been granted, and Jordan is now legally prohibited from approaching us. In this time he has tried to do so, but we've called the police each time. I also know he lost his job over all this, because it's something he screamed about once when he showed up at my house again. I won't lie, this man scares me, and I don't think the restraining order will be enough to stop him from harassing us. But at least now, he can end up in jail. Update 7. I was right, nothing was going to stop him. But at least now he's going to spend a year in jail for violating the restraining order. Once again he showed up at my house, and once again we called the police. Now Austin and I are seriously considering moving to another city. There's nothing stopping him from doing the same thing in a year, or even sooner if he gets out early. We're exploring our options and will likely move in the coming months. Some people have asked what my son thinks about this. The truth is, he's still too young to understand what's going on. Since he's only ever known Austin as his father, he just sees a crazy man yelling in our front yard. We haven't explained anything else to him. Update 8. It's been 2 years since my last update, and now we live several states away, practically on the other coast. A friend told me Jordan has been released from jail, but he hasn't contacted us in all this time. It's been so good to have this time of peace for ourselves because living in constant fear of him showing up was exhausting. I know some people call me a bad mother for not letting my son see his biological father. But Jordan rejected every opportunity to be a father in the beginning, and I certainly don't want someone so unstable around my child. When my son is older and can understand all of this, we'll explain how Austin adopted him and what happened. For now, though, we are his parents, and we will do what we believe is best to protect him.